All right, so thank you very much, Andrew. So we are now on December 20th here in Markham. This is our Drawdown Markham monthly virtual meeting. And so I do like to start all of these events with a land acknowledgement to recognize those who came before us on this land. So we begin today by acknowledging that we walk upon the traditional territories of Indigenous peoples. We recognize their history, spirituality, culture, and stewardship of the land. We're grateful to all Indigenous groups for their commitment to protect the land and its resources. We're committed to reconciliation, partnership, and enhanced understanding. We acknowledge the land we're meeting on here in the Greater Toronto Area is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Wendat, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe peoples, and is now home to many diverse peoples. We'd also like to acknowledge the land we are on here is at the meeting place of two treaties, the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit and those of the First Nations of the Williams Treaty. We thank them and other Indigenous peoples for sharing this land with us. We also acknowledge and recognize all of the world's Indigenous peoples as stewards of Mother Earth. With that, I do like to also say Sawubona, which means I see you, I see myself in you, I see your hopes, your dreams, and your struggles. I also see your ancestors as well, because interconnectedness does not end with two people who are greeting each other. It extends to include the ancestors. All beings in Mother Nature are interconnected. There is no sense of being separate. I see myself in all beings, and therefore if I harm other beings or Mother Nature, it translates into harming myself. So now I will share my screen if I'm allowed to gain access. Thank you. And
go right ahead.
I'm going ahead. Thank you, Andrew. Very interesting. Okay, so welcome to another special presentation of Drawdown Markham on this day, Tuesday, December 20th, 2022. So this special presentation is being made in collaboration with UnityNet International in support of the members of the UnityNet Global Partnership for Regenerative Development, or the GP4RD. I wanted to mention that this presentation will be recorded and broadcast globally for all of our UnityNet members to watch and consider as actions that their own local communities can do as well, and for which Drawdown Markham, which is located here in the city of Markham, can consider to partner with them through our UnityNet CTP program for building holistic, regenerative, climate-smart communities, both here in Canada and around the world. So what I will do as well is open up the chat window, and for those on the call, I do put in a number of different links and information about all of the things that I talk about during the call, so people will have a record of all of these things that I talk about, because these are not things that we're just making up. We are developing this network through social media. We are also developing or pointing to different resources that are typically available online for anybody to be able to use wherever they are in the world, as long as they have internet access. So this live Zoom call today is the fourth event in our monthly Drawdown Markham Community Climate Action meetings following the COVID-19 pandemic lockdowns, which started in early 2020. Our presentation and discussion today is going to be done by Zach Steele from the brandswan.com digital marketing and creative design agency in Vaughan, Ontario, our neighbor community to the west of Markham here in York Region in the Greater Toronto Area of Southern Ontario, Canada. This will be followed by an open discussion about the events Drawdown Markham has done over the past 3 months, along with a quick discussion about the events for 2023 that we'll want to focus on. This discussion will be led by myself, Lloyd Halferty, the co-founder and chair of Drawdown Markham. I'm also the co-founder of UnityNet International, which is the group that is building the framework for the global Unity network of networks on social media, together with our friends and colleagues who are members of the Ad Hoc International Advisory Board of Goodwill Ambassadors and Activists, AHIABGA, globally. So Drawdown Markham is focusing on our own local localization processes as an example for others around the world, and hopefully in future as an anchor for the global partnerships we are creating through the CTP program for building these holistic, regenerative, climate-smart communities, both here in Canada and in local communities across Turtle Island and around the world, most likely starting in Canada, the USA, the Caribbean, Africa, and South Asia, since that's where our network of networks is strongest. Most people are aware of the activities here in Canada and across our network as well. So I'm putting in the chat a link to the website for Zach Steele, who will be our speaker later after this opening presentation, as well as a link to information about myself. It is important for us to move forward locally here in the city of Markham in the Greater Toronto area of Ontario, Canada, in the Rouge and Don watersheds of the Great Lakes Basin in the north shore of Lake Ontario, just south of the Oak Ridges Moraine, east-west corridor of protected landscapes and farms, by also working with local Indigenous peoples and communities, local elected leaders, business people, and land stewards, stewardship organizations like the TRCA, and NGOs and CSOs who are protecting our lands, our waters, and our biodiversity, while also working with citizens to ensure livelihoods so we can protect and enhance and restore our watersheds and the integrity of the biosphere in the region, and for all downstream communities and people and all our relations, whom we must also consider as our brothers and sisters of this land we call Turtle Island. So again, I'm putting some links into the chat about some of the landscapes around here, some of the digital maps, for instance, produced by various organizations in the Greater Toronto area and Ontario and Canada. We do have a number of resources that have been developed, especially through the Toronto Regional Conservation Authority, and there are a number of places where we can learn about where we are and how we can connect to land in our regions. So again, organizations like the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Areas, which are divided into 10 municipal sections. So a lot of people just don't understand and know their own landscapes, which is another part of what we are trying to teach people in our local communities. So this event today is being hosted by Drawdown Markham. It is primarily being done to support the expansion of our Drawdown Markham Community Climate Action Hub, and especially the Youth Task Force. The Youth Task Force is a forum for taking local action on big issues like climate change and global warming, and engaging youth in both the conversation and the practical implementation of the many solutions that are available to achieve drawdown and the Sustainable Development Goals locally, while also known as the Global Goals, or SDGs, which are the 17 comprehensive goals for all of humanity to achieve by the year 2030, which is only about the next 7 years. So the SDGs include things like zero hunger and no poverty, and clean water and clean energy, and sustainable communities and habitats for all people and all nature. It also includes tackling climate change, achieving justice, equity, peace, education, and health and well-being for all people, and the diversity of species who live with us on this planet we call Earth. And it is the only one place in the universe that we know for certain that the conditions for human life are perfect. It requires that we be responsible in our production and consumption of Earth's resources, protect the land and the waters and the people and the biodiversity for all our relations, and ensure that we leave no one behind as we begin this transition of our global economy to one that's not only sustainable, but regenerative of nature and human relations with our mother, the Earth. And so again, I will put into the chat additional links to our network, Drawdown Markham Youth Task Force, along with these global goals. and the related Unity RDG Club network, which we are also attempting to build here locally. So I also want to build a local professionals network. We call the Human Resource Catalog, which we also call our Drawdown Markham Business Network, or Community Investment and Exchange System, which includes a professional online voluntary database of professionals in our community who believe in a better future and want to take action to make certain that their children and families will have that better future, no matter where they might end up in the world as they develop their own sustainable pathways and consider a career in regenerative development and seek to become humanitarian entrepreneurs in their own local communities, like here in Markham, York Region, and the Greater Toronto area of Southern Ontario, Canada. We expect that this local community business network of regenerative development professionals will eventually be expanded into a better platform that we call the Interchange for Peace VCN, which will integrate a number of different social media, including LinkedIn, Alignable, and other professional and business networks. But for now, we use LinkedIn as the top social media professionals network that we start with as we build our network of networks. So again, in the chat, you'll find links to access the Drawdown Markham Business and Professional Online Voluntary Networks. So our partnerships in Drawdown Markham are all done through a single partnership through the We Energize Global Cooperation Turtle Island International Civil Society Organization, which has a mandate to deliver life value peace education, which is done in the context of life learning gardens, which Unity International calls community unity garden learning centers and community hubs. So the mission of the We Energize Global Cooperation is to transform the human mindset, and therefore our relationships from one that is focused on conflict and competition to one that's focused on peace and cooperation. Again, you will find links to the We Energize Global Cooperation Turtle Island in the chat, along with the Unity Gardens network that we are building, and as well, today you'll find a link to the Unity Hub network as well. So I mentioned our cooperation with UnityNet International. This is one of the organizations that I've been creating with other partners here in the GTA. Although our partnerships extend globally, especially in the US, the Caribbean, Asia, and especially in Africa as well. But it's intended to become a global network with global reach to all countries and all local communities eventually. As you can see on the screen, UnityNet International is a humanitarian enterprise and a global sustainable and regenerative development corporation, supporting and promoting the local delivery of open source regenerative climate smart infrastructure, set up as these life learning gardens that we call community unity garden learning centers and community hubs. We're leveraging a process for localizing the delivery of and achievement of global goals, starting with those sustainable development goals, which continue until 2030. So we're offering services that allow other companies and organizations to partner with us and make money doing what they do best while supporting the achievement of those 17 goals, those SDGs that are intended to be done until 2030. But after 2030, we don't yet know what the global goals will be, but we do anticipate that they might be called the Regenerative Development Goals, or RDGs. And so UnityNet International is in the process of establishing a regenerative development professionals network, both here in Markham, York Region, in the Greater Toronto area of Ontario, and across our networks in Canada and globally, through our network of networks, which is what we call UnityNet. Again, you can find links in the chat to UnityNet International. So one of the most important nodes of our global Unity network is the Indigenous Global Unity Network, or IGU network, which is being developed through the IGU Summit events, which happen weekly on Thursday mornings, where this Thursday is week 82 of our weekly Indigenous Unity discussions and presentations, which are being done in support of practical reconciliation between settlers, sometimes called colonists, and Indigenous peoples in all countries on all continents, but starting here in Turtle Island and in Africa primarily. The IGU network is a network that is intended to bring together all of the Indigenous communities from around the world to contribute to the achievement of a globalized, productive, compassionate, collaborative, regenerative economy that leaves no one behind, which is the future economy that we'd like to support by leveraging our network of networks to empower members to implement local solutions for achieving these global goals now and into the future. So again, you'll find links to the Indigenous Global Unity Network, as well as the related UnityNet Youth Peace Gardens Network as well, that has recently been created. So you can find out more about this Global Unity Network, or UnityNet, by going to the links also on this page. The Global Unity Network has a mandate to showcase global cooperation, currently described as SDG 17, Partnerships for Goals, but where we're focused on the local implementation of these goals, starting with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, continuing until the year 2030. Our network and business structure and interventions at the community level are also intended to empower marginalized people and communities worldwide on all continents, but also including here in the city of Markham, York Region, in the Don and Rouge watersheds of the Greater Toronto Area, here in Southern Ontario, Canada, where we can become a model for communities around the world to do similar things. Through our business and social relationships in the local communities we work in, we're also helping people develop and implement local partnerships as a pathway to achieving the global goals, where the intention is for the members of these localized networks to be local communities, to do their own local work to implement the goals in ways that will leave no one behind, especially as we approach the end of the Sustainable Development Goal period in 2030 and enter the period of the Regenerative Development Goals from 2030 to 2045, as anticipated may happen as demand for such solutions increases, especially among young people who are concerned for their own future, as issues like global warming, climate change, loss of biodiversity, inflation, housing, food security, all of them impact their own livelihoods, and in some cases, even their ability to survive the extreme conditions that are starting to appear in communities around the world. And so again, you will find in the chat links to the Global Unity Network as you see on the screen. So part of the work that we do at UnityNet International is in partnership with community organizations like Drawdown Markham. And we dive into and leverage the local knowledge of the people on the ground in these local communities who know their watersheds, know their local businesses, the organizations, the community leaders and institutions, and use this intimate local knowledge in a way to help build local networks of regenerative development professionals and practitioners who are confident and will become members of the global partnership for regenerative development, because that is the future of infrastructure and business globally. The Global Partnership for Regenerative Development is a regenerative development professionals network that's tasked with the local implementation of the various practical solutions for helping communities and all their citizens achieve these global goals in each one of our own local communities, including right here in the city of York Region, Greater Toronto, in Canada, in the Great Lakes watershed of northeastern Turtle Island, which is, of course, North America. So you will find in the chat a number of other links to our related networks as well. So one of the other groups that we are also supporting through Drawdown Markham is the Regenerative Living, Learning, and Lifestyle Network, which is a public group and discussion around helping humanity accelerate the transition from the current situation of waging wars and using winner-take-all competition for implementing solutions to our problems, also described culturally as homo configliere. By understanding this concept of Ubuntu for business, we're helping each person in community and business to achieve a state of being where all people, including our decision makers, realize that we are all human beings and part of nature, and must therefore take care of each other and our mothers, including Mother Nature. It is a state of consciousness called homo amore universalis, which is an idea that I believe that young people can embrace as they learn how to restore nature, our communities, and our economy back into balance as part of a holistic partnership with all our relations. So again, in the chat, you'll find links to the Regenerative Living, Learning, and Lifestyle Network, which is on both Facebook and LinkedIn. So another partner that I want to mention that we are working with is the indigenous community created by the Sustainable Development Association of Montreal. Douglas Jack has provided a way for us to understand the concept of relocalization and re-indigenization through his programs of building local community enterprise networks, partnerships, and empowerment systems at the grassroots level through the neighborhood and multi-home integration, cataloging, and mapping systems. There are decades of valuable information at the website that's shown on the screen. We hope to use their model to develop our Interchange for Peace human resource catalog as well. You'll find links in the chat to the Indigenous community website, along with a link to Leechcraft community, which is actually our local community where I am living here in Fort Hill, Markham, which is on the south side of Highway 17, Highway 7, north of the 407, between Bayview and Leslie. So I want to mention that as well that we're doing this presentation in collaboration with Andrew Networks, which is in California, in Los Angeles. We call Andrew our Yes, Yes, Yes partner. His network is also our door opening network of the Global Unity Network, or UnityNet, that allows members of our network to be able to discover their inner selves and passions so they can come together with the people of the network, acting like a net to support the dreams of our members. They can also leverage those passions to transform their visions of a better future for themselves and their communities into a reality. But it should be a reality that makes sense for themselves and their communities, however they might define that, and what a better future is collectively as they seek to work together in partnership to leave no one behind in their own local communities. So Andrew Networks host our weekly Thursday Zoom calls, the IGU Summit events, which we're committed to do weekly until the end of December 2023. So one more year at least. Andrew Networks is a brand and domain name owned by ParXTC Export Trading Company, comprising the various social media channels, including TRN TV, the Universal Citizens Media Network, Conversations with Andrew Williams Jr., and many others. So Andrew Networks donates our UnityNet hosting and promotional support services, and is also rebroadcasting any and all production-ready episodes that focus on things like sustainable development, regenerative solutions, localization, and local self-sufficiency and related themes. He does it by broadcasting and recording for posterity all of the events and programs on the AHIABGA.org domain, which gets redirected to his various channels, including the UCIT TV site and others. So again, you will find a link to the IGU Summit to register for those Thursday events, as well as some information about the AHIABGA-TV channel and the UN Global Compact vision and strategy, which are key to what we are also promoting. So one of the other local organizations that we support here in Markham is the South Markham Food Security Network, which was started by a gentleman by the name of Michael Chen, who's also with an organization called Food Forest South Markham, which has a conversation that started in 2020 in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. It was a conversation between Michael and the Youth and Parents Association of Markham. Michael was attending the Teachers College at that time, was interested in gardens and the concept of establishing local learning hubs for youth and local families to use in their local communities. Michael was inspired by the TRCA's SNAP projects, where the residents saved water, grew their own edible fruit trees, and took ownership of their parks. He said to me at that time, I'd like to see something similar in South Markham. So I introduced Michael to our community sustainability working group of Science for Peace, which also hosts Drawdown Markham. I told him that we're working in partnership with We Energize Global Cooperation Turtle Island and their Go Local campaign for community resilience and adaptation. That's also working in support of the UN Decade for Ecosystem restoration as well. So again, I'm putting links into the chat for people to find out more about these local networks like YPAM and our Community Sustainability Working Group of Science for Peace, along with the Markham Climate Smart Gardens Network, which was created with Michael. So I want to mention as well that Drawdown Markham is an essential part and founding member of the Markham AHIABGA Collaborative, our local interfaith neighborhood academic and business collaborative, part of the UnityNet GTA, and is intended to empower local humanitarian entrepreneurs who will be implementing their holistic cooperative community Unity Garden Learning Center spaces, hopefully in all of our local communities of the city of Markham in your region and the greater Toronto area as well. So I'm putting in a link to the Markham AHIABGA Collaborative professional network on LinkedIn, as you see on the screen. So of course, I do want to mention UnityNet GTA, which brings together all 25 municipalities of the greater Toronto area to work together and empower young female and feminist humanitarian entrepreneurs, the FFAG, who will be the first to implement the localized enterprise solutions for achieving global goals through their community-based enterprises and businesses, and where the intention is to leave no one behind, as each one of these 25 local communities of the greater Toronto area of Ontario, Canada, here on Turtle Island, begin to implement these solutions. We are, of course, in the Great Lakes watershed north of Lake Ontario. So I am putting in a link to UnityNet GTA for people to be able to join. Of course, UnityNet GTA is part of UnityNet Ontario, which is still fairly new. It's a provincial organization, first in Canada, also including UnityNet Gov, a similar network in the greater Ottawa Valley, where we also plan to implement our UnityNet programs of localization and the community interventions that help to create the localized empowerment networks for the local humanitarian entrepreneurs who are implementing these open source climate smart infrastructure solutions as community Unity Garden learning centers. And that will teach all of these young people and families in their local communities how to implement these local regenerative solutions for achieving the global goals through their businesses as part of a local, regional, provincial, national, and international empowerment network of networks that we call UnityNet. Again, in that you'll find information about UnityNet Ontario. And I mentioned briefly UnityNet Canada during our last meeting. This network was created because we intend to establish similar provincial and territorial networks across Canada in the future. Of course, right now we're focused on Ontario because this is where we live, and the best way to work and move forward quickly is to focus on the local. But think globally, considering solutions that can help to create a better world for the next 7 generations. So again, in the chat you'll find links to UnityNet Canada. So the final partner network that I'd like to mention today is UnityNet Turtle Island, which encompasses UnityNet Canada, the USA, the Caribbean, Mexico, Central America, and even South America by treaty. And it's intended to help bring together people of all cultures across both continents of the Americas, but especially so we can engage in dialogue and possible partnership with the Indigenous peoples of the Americas and worldwide as we consider partnerships between people and local communities on continents like Africa, Eurasia, even on islands in Oceania and more, as a way to empower local communities to take action to implement the local solutions to achieving these global goals locally through their community-based humanitarian enterprises and businesses, institutions, through the local partnerships that UnityNet International and our partners help them to establish in their own local communities worldwide. So again, in the chat, you'll find links to UnityNet Turtle Island and the partner networks, UnityNet Africa and Diaspora, and also a link to our UnityNet lobby control room WhatsApp discussion set up for questions and conversations around the protocols and rules of international nonprofits, which is where we are focusing many of our efforts in network building. So on this final opening slide, I come full circle back to Drawdown Markham, where I'd like to emphasize again our partnership with UnityNet, where we can now consider to implement partnerships with any other local community or organization in the world as a way to help implement local open source regenerative climate smart infrastructure and related enterprises learning programs for young people and families as we move forward toward a globalized, compassionate, collaborative, regenerative economy that leaves no one behind, especially as we approach 2030 and the end of the SDGs, where we also seek to learn about solutions to our various predicaments, like climate change, biodiversity, energy, housing, food security, and reliable income, but where we can also find solutions to all of these problems in our own local communities. If only we begin to develop those partnerships, not only locally, but globally as well, by celebrating our diversity, the diversity of humanity. That's actually one of the most important assets we have. And through these networks and partnerships, we begin learning how to be compassionate entrepreneurs who have the knowledge, the skills, and the empathy to change the future of our global economy so it will serve all people and all living things in the natural world, equitable. Because it's one of the most important things that we need to do as parents of children who are seeking ways to create a better future for themselves and their own children, grandchildren, and are thinking ahead to at least the next 7 generations of human beings on this singular, unique, and beautiful planet we call Earth, which is the only place in the universe where human beings can naturally thrive, but only if we can take care of Mother Nature and take care of each other as well. So I do want to mention the presentation today, done one day after the end of the UN Biodiversity Conference, which was held in Montreal, Quebec, the seat of the UN CBD Secretariat. That took place from December 7th to 19th. So yesterday was the last day. COP15 focused on protecting nature and halting biodiversity loss around the world. The Government of Canada participated, with the Prime Minister of Canada having a strong presence at the meeting, unlike many of its global counterparts. Canada's priority was to ensure that COP15 was a success. We will see. This follows COP27 in Egypt last month, which was in its second week when we had our last meeting of Drawdown Markham. Last month, I noted that it should be worth keeping an eye on the thematic days and the discussions around, such as just transition, food security, innovative finance for climate and development, investing in the future of energy, water security, and the sustainability of vulnerable communities, science, youth, and future generations, decarbonization, adaptation, agriculture, gender, and water, along with what they call ACE, or civil society, and biodiversity and its various solutions. Over the past 2 months, we've also had some important questions directed at the 2022 Markham municipal election candidates, many of whom joined us on our second monthly Drawdown Markham Zoom call, just like this one. The first thing that I had asked of those candidates was, if elected, would you pledge to work with the members of Drawdown Markham and UnityNet GTA to plant youth peace gardens at the City of Markham municipal offices? So again, you'll find some links to the CBD COP15 event in the chat, so everybody is aware that this event just took place. And you'll also find some links to the municipal election that also happened 2 months ago here in the City of Markham, where actually happened all across Ontario, where we elected new candidates for our municipal councils. Very important elections for us when we consider the processes of globalization. I noted as well last month, we'd like to establish the UnityNet Youth Peace Gardens in Markham and York Region as a network of gardens across the city, do trees of peace and reconciliation tree planting ceremonies at each one of them with the owners of the land and those who use it on a regular basis. For each youth peace garden, we do also want to raise an Indigenous unity flag in ceremony together with local Indigenous peoples who may also wish to do some drumming and or smudging of sage or sweetgrass in order to ensure that we're not forgetting our local Indigenous partners. Many of these ceremonies will be done on World Environment Day during our yearly Abraham Project celebrations on June 5th, starting next year in 2023. So again, you will find links to the Unity Tree of Peace and Reconciliation Tree Plantings Network, along with the links to some past events that we did in the summer of 2022 in the city of Mississauga. There's also the related Mississauga INAP Collaborative Network, a member of UnityNet GTA, and of course, we're also part of UnityNet Ontario and UnityNet Canada, which is partnered with organizations in Africa through UnityNet Africa and Diaspora and the Indigenous Global Unity Network. So the second question that I had asked our municipal election candidates 2 months ago was actually, would you also encourage our local businesses through the Markham Chamber of Commerce and Board of Trade to also plant youth peace gardens in all of their headquarters? This is especially important to do with any and all businesses and organizations in Markham, York Region, and the Greater Toronto Area who are members of the UN Global Compact, or the UNGC, which also have local offices here, whether they are headquarters of these companies and organizations or not. So again, you'll find some links to our local organizations like the Board of Trade and the Chinese Chamber of Commerce, and as well a link to the UN Global Compact directory. So the third question I did ask the municipal candidates during that second meeting, would you do the same thing for the various local schools, both public and private, at all levels of learning, from kindergartens, primary and secondary schools, up to York University, Seneca College, as well as community service organizations like Lions Club, Rotary, YMCA, and encourage them to also plant youth peace gardens on all of their own properties as well. So this is where we are developing our Unity Learning Network, and through the Learning Partnership for Global Unity, which is celebrating the diversity of all of our local communities. Sorry, it's just a little bit slow here. There we go. One other thing I did mention, as I summarized what I had asked the candidates in the election, was to note that the members of Drawdown Markham and UnityNet would love to see the youth peace gardens popping up all over the city, planted by residents and businesses and families and children, like Scouts groups. As a reminder that the city of Markham and our citizens are committed to achieving our own sustainability plan, and will pledge to domesticate the SDGs, those global goals, into all of our local communities as part of an effort to implement the groundbreaking Green Print, which is Markham's community sustainability plan to improve our natural environment and enhance the quality of life in our city. We want to ensure that participants in these calls understand that the Green Print in Markham is a 50-year plan with a bold vision and a strong leadership commitment to make Markham one of the most livable and sustainable communities in North America, where the focus is on developing corporate and community initiatives that promote energy conservation and efficiency, green technology, food security, and environmental enhancement. Where the city of Markham itself has noted that together with these innovative programs, we have dramatically reduced Markham's carbon footprint and improved our natural environment. So the goal at the city of Markham is to protect the public, respect the natural and built environments through excellence in sustainable community planning and infrastructure management programs. I noted as well that the youth peace gardens are fairly simple. They are gardens that have a tree of peace and reconciliation planted along with an Indigenous unity flag and a peaceful, and usually a commemorative plaque marking the spot as an important site in the community to have conversations about various local solutions to achieving the global goals, starting, of course, with those sustainable development goals. So again, in the chat, you will find links to the UnityNet Youth Peace Gardens Network, along with our UnityNet Unity Tree of Peace and Reconciliation tree planting discussion groups, and the peace projects that are related to many of the the initiatives that are happening in the world. So there are many, many links that I am sharing here. I will share everything as well through our discussion networks. As we build the network, we share these documents. So I mentioned that the gardens would also be symbolic of the City of Markham's municipal energy plan called Getting to Zero, which is a comprehensive long-term citywide energy plan that has the objective of achieving net zero emissions by 2050. But this is in addition to the Youth Peace Gardens also being symbolic of the City of Markham's inclusivity, equity, diversity, and accessibility plan, for which the City of Markham is committed to supporting people and communities in all their diversity and stands firmly against all forms of hate, racism, and discrimination. It's one of the City of Markham's key strategic priorities embedded in the city's strategic plan called Building Markham's Future Together. So our Drawdown Markham and UnityNet GTA members would like to help the members of our local communities, including residents, businesses, institutions, and other community organizations in the City of Markham in ways that will allow us to become the first net negative city in the world that's actively implementing local drawdown solutions that are also creating jobs locally and can help to accelerate the path to net zero and hopefully move us beyond net zero and into negative emissions territory, where the city becomes an example of a drawdown city. I did mention to the city council candidates during that last election that with the establishment of the Youth Peace Gardens all across the City of Markham, we can also establish them at the head offices of our local businesses, in our institutions and community organizations, and at our schools, possibly also in some of our public parks and public pathways for walking and biking. And with the construction of these Youth Peace Gardens in the City of Markham, we could also become eligible to become an international peace city as well, joining the nearly 400 others around the world who have done so already. So again, in the chat, you'll find additional links to the diversity and equity plan of the City of Markham, along with a number of other links to relevant information for people to understand, for instance, the idea of localizing net zero. So finally, I also mentioned a few other things which we did not expect any promises to be made when we had our meeting with those councillors, but that we'd like to do also, working closely with City of Markham, York Region School Boards, York University, Seneca College, various local community groups and service organizations like Rotary Markham, establishing a formal INAP collaborative with and for the residents of the City of Markham, so we can begin to consider the establishment of our own local community Unity Garden Learning Center or community hub to be shared among the community members here, used by all the schools and community partners to deliver these education and training that the various young people and professionals of Markham will require to learn as a means to not only survive global warming, but potentially to thrive, even in a warming and chaotic climate, now and into the future. So the INAP Collaborative is intended to empower our young people to be mentored by our elders, to also take local action to deliver the various humanitarian enterprise solutions locally in a way that ensures that we leave no one behind as we transition our economy to a localized, productive, compassionate, collaborative, regenerative economy right here in the City of Markham, in the Rouge and Don watersheds, in the Great Lakes Basin of the Greater Toronto Area, in the north edge of Lake Ontario, here in Canada. Because once we establish our INAP collaborative, we can begin planning our next big steps, which will be the organization of the local Bubble Fun festivals and the Bubble Fun dancing, Bubble Fun sports for young people and families, so they can participate in learning about the local drawdown solutions in a way that's engaging, fun to do. We call it edutainment. Bubble Fun festivals normally take place in August, on any date between August 9th and 19th. So August 9th is International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples. August 19th is World Humanitarian Day. Between those two dates is also August 12th, International Youth Day. Again, you can find additional links to all of this information in the chat. So learn more about all of these days and celebrations, including International Youth Day and our own Global Fun Festival Network, public network, and the International Global Fun Network across our network. Members who are supporting our implementation pathways. There's also a link to the Global Unity Pandemic, which is actually a legacy group. Was the first that was started back in 2020 during the pandemic lockdowns when we were starting this whole endeavor. So there are support networks throughout the world that we have been building over the past couple of years. So I had mentioned on Monday, October 24th, to all of our local municipal candidates who are running those elections, should they become the local decision makers at the local level. We ended up with our mayor, Frank Scarpitti, being reelected. It's his 5th straight term as mayor. He garnered more than 44,000 votes. He won against Don Hamilton, who received less than 25,000. So there were 4 regional councillors elected, including Michael Chan, Alan Ho, Jim Jones, and Joe Lee, familiar names in York Region. But Jim Jones in particular had an interesting election platform because he wanted to invite various companies and solution providers from across Ontario and Canada and from around the world to set up their North American head offices in the city of Markham, possibly in the Markham Mixed Innovation District, especially if they have innovative solutions for growing food in cities like the city of Markham and those in the Greater Toronto area. So essentially, Jim Jones has an ongoing platform election promise to establish the city of Markham as a vertical farming innovation hub in Canada and North America, especially for those solutions that are applicable to harsher and more extreme climates like here in Canada, where the weather is colder. It's normally impossible to grow anything in the winter for nearly 8 months a year because the ground is frozen, like trying to grow food on concrete, where the plants are all dormant and hiding away from about October until the springtime weather comes again, usually around April and May. So Jim Jones' plan is to ensure food security for the residents of the GTA by demonstrating solutions for growing food 365 days a year, even in some of the harshest conditions imaginable, while still being able to pledge that the city of Markham is able to achieve its net zero ambitions across all sectors of the economy, including scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, which will soon be required by the UN for those countries who have signed on to the Paris Agreement, which includes Canada. So the links are in the chat for the Markham municipal election results, including a link to information about Mayor Frank Scarpitti and some of the people that were actually elected here in the city of Markham, including many of our local and regional councillors as well, including my own local councillor, Issa Lee. There is also some links to or information about the trustees of the school boards that were elected here, and I am including a link to our own Smart Cities Network and Smart Greenhouses Network, along with the Unity Tourism for SDGs Network, which we think is very important as well to support these businesses that are setting up to establish tourism opportunities for them to showcase their solutions to the world. And so I'd like to also invite others to join, especially UnityNet Net Zero Canada, as we move forward to try to achieve net zero in all our local communities here in Canada, but also in so many other countries around the world. I do want to note as well that one more time, the UN just issued a report on 8th of November last month called the report of the high-level expert group on net zero commitments, which noted that a growing number of governments and non-state actors are pledging to be carbon-free, which is obviously good news, as noted by the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. The problem that the report noted is that the criteria and benchmarks for those net zero commitments have varying levels of rigor and many loopholes. Guterres noted that these loopholes are, quote, wide enough to drive a diesel truck through. Guterres noted as well that we must have zero tolerance for net zero greenwashing. So today's expert group report, as noted, is a how-to guide to ensure credible, accountable net zero pledges. It provides clarity in 4 key areas, including environmental integrity, credibility, accountability, and the role of governments. They also focused on non-state actors, including businesses, financial institutions, cities, and regions, and noted that on issues of environmental integrity, the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, is still their scientific North Star. It was also noted that the net zero pledges must be in line with the IPCC scenarios, limiting warming to 1.5 degrees, which means global emissions must decline by at least 45% by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050. Remember, 2030 is only 7 years away, 45% cuts in emissions. The report noted that any pledges that are made by state and non-state entity to achieve net zero goals should have interim targets every 5 years, starting in 2025. So by that time, of course, we're entering 2023 now. We have about 2 more years before those interim targets need to be set, and then 5 more years to reach them. So the targets must include and cover all greenhouse gas emissions and all scopes of emissions, which translates into the following. For financial institutions, this means all financed activities. For businesses, it means all emissions, direct, indirect, and those originating from supply chains. And for cities and regions, like the city of Markham, New York region, it means all territorial emissions and not just from their municipal operations. So Guterres said, the message is clear to all those managing existing voluntary initiatives, as well as CEOs, mayors, and governors committed to net zero. Abide by this standard and update your guidelines right away, and certainly no later than COP28, which is next year. In other words, the UN is putting their foot down, holding these entities' feet to the fire, the corporations, the financial institutions, the cities, the regions, to make good on their pledges to achieve net zero in reality and not just on paper, which may just mean a lot of squashed and burnt feet in the near future. So again, you will find links to that particular announcement in the chat. That was made on 31st of March, and the members of that group, which included Ms. Amanda Starbuck, program director for the Sunrise Project. There were a number of other very important people at these announcements that were made, including people from India and Australia and Colombia and Africa as well. It includes as well Ms. Catherine McKenna, a familiar name here in Canada, founder and principal of Climate and Nature Solutions, and of the Women Leading on Climate group, which was launched at COP26 in Glasgow. And so, of course, we are supporting our female and feminist humanitarian entrepreneurs within UNITED, which means that we should be linking with organizations such as ours, so we can get support for our actions here locally in and around the city of Markham in the greater Toronto area. There is also a note as well that the European Union has also agreed to create a new law. So its 27 member states have set targets to reduce carbon emissions by 2030. This includes in agriculture as well, which is why we have our climate smart infrastructure network and our climate smart Canadian network supporting the integrated energizing universal climate smart community humanitarian social enterprise hubs and the related smart infrastructure networks that include the Energy Green Trade Alliance and the goal, of course, this global partnership for regenerative development, which we are promoting as well today. So the links that were provided before also have links to the Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative, which is essentially all of the people who are financing solutions in all of our local communities. So the launch date was April of 2021, where there was the creation of a new financial alliance for net zero emissions. That was actually launched. So we're talking about almost 2 years ago. So they are probably just about ready to start financing these solutions in local communities around the world. So this is my final slide from last month, where we closed out my presentation for the day, opened up the discussion for all call. I did have a couple more slides this time around because I wanted to talk about the outcomes of the municipal election that took place on November 24th. Provide some additional information about climate finance and commitments by non-state actors. I also wanted to mention our Sunlight Spectral global hybrid virtual and in-person edutainment events that the Global Community Network organizes every time there's a significant solar eclipse visible by people somewhere in the world. The first Sunlight Spectral event that we did was Sunday, June 21st, 2020, during the pandemic lockdowns, where we brought together a very few people, a social distance, masked, of course, in order to promote our globalization programs globally for the first time ever. So those Journey of the Eclipse events, we celebrate local efforts by the citizens of every one of our countries that can see the eclipse by any global community. So these, as they implement the global goals, our events include these live broadcasts and interviews and music done for the duration of the solar eclipse, coordinated with the associations and associates in places like Bermuda, who are spearheading the global Super Jubilee 400 and Spark for Humanity campaigns. I also want to briefly mention the initial discussions we had regarding an Indigenous Grandmothers Earth Walk 2025 showcase event. The event is intended to be a walk, or perhaps an e-bike journey across Canada from east coast to west, from Newfoundland to Vancouver, so that Indigenous grandmothers and families of Turtle Island and Africa and the world can plant trees of peace and reconciliation, raise the Indigenous unity flags during and ahead of the Invictus Games, which was announced by Prince Harry and the Duchess of Sussex at the Invictus Games in Hague earlier this year. We also want to host a Grandmothers Indigenous Bubble Fund multicultural family festival next year here in the city of Markham, with the city and the Chamber of Commerce and the Rotary Club and others, to bring awareness to all of these eco-villages that are being planned and built around the world, even in our biggest and busiest cities, like here in the Greater Toronto area, where we can also plan to build at least one as a Unity Peace Center, showcasing all 5 of the open source regenerative climate smart infrastructure solutions for achieving a compassionate, collaborative, regenerative economy that leaves no one behind. So with this as the final slide, we can now let our guest speaker on. We've been about 1 hour in the opening for the event we have. And so I will stop the share. And we only have Heinrich on our call. Did we lose our guest speaker today?
I think you've got some internet troubles because he was in and out, in and out.
Okay. Okay. So hopefully, let me see if he's online on WhatsApp. I was just talking to him this morning. Can we get back? Oops. Let me see if he's still around. Oh, there we go. So he wrote me a quick message here. Let me see what he's saying. Oh, he said my phone battery died. I have to attend a conference soon. Perhaps I could speak on another day at a future meeting. Okay, well, it sounds like he was using his phone and didn't have a good enough charge on it. So I went through the entire presentation. It was the same as last month. Essentially, I did obviously have a little bit more information. I also mentioned in the promotions that we would have a roadmap caucus discussion, also looking to the future, instead of having only a year-end review, which sounds less exciting, more like business rather than having a more exciting year-end membership engagement process. So I'm using as our template a poster that, or I used as our template for that year-end review and the roadmap caucus. Somebody that on one of our networks, I believe in Malawi, had posted it to one of our groups. So I used that as a guide to our discussions. It actually provided a template for the important initiatives that we'd like to do in 2023, along with those most important dates in the 2023 calendar that we do need to consider, like the UNDRIP Day, which is the new one, on April 22nd, Earth Day, which should include a drumming ceremony at the city halls with our local and global Indigenous peoples. So hopefully some can even participate virtually. So we also have the Unity Net Abraham Project, the tree planting and Indigenous Unity Flag raising ceremonies on June 5th, World Environment Day. Begin to establish the youth peace gardens in the local communities. And then the Bubble Fun Festival, of course, which I mentioned, the arts, sports, dancing, and other family activities for community edutainment. So that's in August, related to those climate smart solutions, helping our communities achieve food security and food sovereignty and regenerative climate smart growing. But we also help us to achieve net zero through, and then ultimately drawdown, eventually achieving global, this idea of the globalized productive CCRE that leaves no one behind. So the final big event, I think, is Global Cooperation Day on October 4th, which is also known as Universal Children's Day, I think, in some countries, which kicks off the Youth Peace Week for 2023 and the Unity Net Climate Smart Global Youth Summit Week, which is more like a fortnight, but takes place from Global Cooperation Day to World Food Day, so October 4th to 16th. So actually, that's where I'm hoping to work with Zach. So he has a promotional organization. I've had these conversations with him. He said that he's hoping to bring people together in where he is in the city of Vaughan, which is our neighbor to the west of Markham. So we can start to build a couple of municipal partnerships together. So we have at least, I'm hoping by the end of 2023, we'll have at minimum the 3 INAB collaboratives established here in New York region, possibly leading toward 25 over the next couple of years, if we can do so. So we're on track. I hope to start to implement these Unity Gardens here, and as a template again for other communities to do so wherever they are. So hopefully we can work as well with other people in South Africa, like Juliet and those other team members who are part of Unity Net South Africa to really start planning. Because if there's going to be networks that we're building here with these, especially again, the UN Global Compact members, those big corporations, and along with the governments and foundations and others here, and they have a global reach. So if they can find their way to finance a project here in Canada, they should be able to find a way to finance projects also in Africa, especially in those local communities with the Indigenous people. Like if you work with, I don't know if you've had conversations, for instance, with Princess Shepi. We're hoping to work with her as well, since she has done so much work organizing the Indigenous communities across Africa, and as well connecting them with Indigenous communities on other continents, even in South America as well. So that's important to involve the Indigenous peoples in this work. So we do have our Youth Peace Week virtual and in-person screening happening, of course, starting with that Sultan and the Saint community dialogue, the event that we have on October 4th, which is really moving us forward. And then, of course, the Ubuntu Summit, as it's called, which I think should be ideally larger. We're hoping to, as we move forward, to have start to do these, what we call the hybrid events, where we're going to start gathering people in like a room. So it won't be just me in a room with nobody here, but it could be an actual gathering of people in a space like at the University of Toronto, or at York University, or at Seneca College, or like with rooms of students actually participating together. And this is obviously as well, I don't know if you've ever taken part in those sessions that Sir Bailey had been doing from Los Angeles, where he had actually had all the youth in the same room with him, even during the pandemic lockdowns, because they were in that room, but he would do this hybrid meeting with a classroom of students in Africa, like in Kenya or Uganda or wherever, and they would have the Zoom meetings with the leader, Sir Bailey, being there, but all his students were behind him, watching and participating and interacting with the other students in the other classroom. And so this is part of the basis of the Global Sister Schools project, where we want to connect those classrooms at any grade, right? We can even connect kindergarten students to kindergarten students on another continent, right? And show them, oh, look, we planted this youth peace garden in our school. Look what it looks like, and then the other students in the other school can share that as well, and they can discuss these solutions, discuss these various not just the infrastructure, but also the social systems that we're trying to promote as we try to engage these communities in conversations around peace and regenerative development. So thank you very much, Heinrich, for staying on the call. I hope that everybody gets these messages, that it is really important that these, what we call local partnerships, are created, the INAP collaboratives. We want these to happen like we're doing here throughout all of Africa, all these local communities, and among the African diaspora, so across the US, and even across Brazil or wherever they are. So we can have these communities and people, countries networked, and so we can accelerate this regenerative development and the pathway to achieving the sustainable development goals. So we can provide, like you say, livelihoods, and provide some kind of climate security, and the idea being the partnerships, this collaborative tree planting program. Plant a tree of peace here in Markham. We plant a tree of peace in whatever country, in another place on another continent. We say these trees are twinned. We're both building unity gardens. And we have a funder, we have a partner, we have this corporation, we have these governments. We're networked together with them. They said they would finance these solutions. These are solutions. So we want them built. So are you going to help pay for this? So we can have high-speed internet, so we can have these vertical farming growing systems, so we can have all of this community infrastructure in place that will that will ensure people are being fed, to ensure that they're being housed properly, and ensure that they're not being forgotten and left behind. So this is the essence of our network, starting with the youth peace gardens, moving toward these unity forests, the climate smart kitchens, the unity garden learning centers, of course, which we also call community hubs, and community peace centers. Ultimately, we also want the eco villages built wherever there might be some green fields. And here in Canada, a lot of them. If you travel out, like I'm planning to travel out to Ottawa next week to visit my family, and you can drive for hours and see nobody in some places, especially if you're on some of the back roads. You won't pass even a single car in some instances. And you won't see anybody walking on the side of the road, unlike in a place like Taiwan, where I was living once, where it was just wall-to-wall people. So there are very, very different circumstances for people around the world. We're in a very remote and large country with a very small relative population that is in a very good position to help other countries with these solutions. So that's where we're hoping to leverage our land resources, our people, to assist others. I do usually close out by saying we have everyone. I want to thank everybody on the Zoom call, but it is just you, Heinrich, that's left with me today, and so I think we will finish up right now, if that works with you.
No, thank you, Lloyd. I think this will be my last engagement with my family commitments in this festive season in South Africa. You know, South Africa, it's a double whammy. It's summer, it is Christmas, New Year. So, you know, around about the 15th, most of the business is closed down, shut down for that period of time. And it's only the big retail that carries on from here on forth. The rest of us are you know, on mandatory leave. You know, you can't. There's no use to be open. There is just nothing happened.
Well, this is. Yeah, this is what I expected, that we would almost have nobody coming on this call, because it is just sort of like only a few days from Christmas, right? It's 20th of December. Nobody's thinking about anything to do with work, right? Everybody's thinking about holidays, visiting family.
What we are doing is very important, and you know, I hope that in South Africa, we went through a very topsy-turvy time in South Africa with you know, the president being incriminated, a lot of things is going wrong. We are on stage 6 blackouts, rolling blackouts with Eskom, no electricity, and you know, it have a very how can I put it, a bad influence on our economy.
Yeah, and psychologically, people are like, what are we doing, right? Where are we going, and how do we get out of this?
Yeah, and
there's a general angst among people, I think, everywhere.
The thing is also, you know, our guys, the guys that brought us up to a certain point with Eskom is resigning. The CEO of Eskom, you know, every 2 years we've got a new CEO, and you know, Eskom is a 65% of all electricity in Africa is generated by Eskom. It is a massive enterprise, and it just went totally corrupt. Corruption is at every nook and cranny of that you know, the whole Eskom is basically a crime scene. And the coal, what's happening now, they've got a new scheme now. The coal that they are picking up at the mines for the power station get dumped along the road and replaced with very high calcium carbonate coal of a very low grade. So, you know, the coal arrives at the power station, and that coal, you know, the boilers is not designed for that.
So it gums everything up. It's probably got a lot of contaminants in it, and it's probably really dirty, and the scrubbers don't work, so they probably just clog up, or they just turn them off.
You know, it is just nothing is working as it should. So then I want to say Merry Christmas to you and your family, and we will tackle this in the new year. Thank you very much.
Oh, it looks like Juliet is actually coming on. If we can talk to her for a second, I'd like to do that. if you're available. I don't know if you need to get off or something.
Yeah, no.
Let's see if Juliet actually comes on. I did admit her, but she may. Oh, there she is.
But you have no audio.
Hello, Juliet. Can you hear us? Oh, it's connecting. Okay. It's just a little bit slow.
So yeah.
I think what she's doing before she has video in one feed and audio in another. Hello, Juliet. Are you here? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Sorry.
Oh, wow.
Yes, my one gadget's battery is down, so I was trying to reconnect on the other one, but I've been following on Facebook the whole presentation.
Okay, excellent. I wasn't sure.
Yes.
I'm never sure if anybody's ever watching these Facebook channels.
Yeah, no, when I struggle to connect via Zoom, I'm going to Facebook so that I don't miss out while I sort out my connection. Yeah. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to everyone.
I think the only person that is still in the morning, it's 2:30 in the afternoon for me. The only person that's morning still is Andrew, but he also has other events that he does on Tuesday, so he doesn't stay long.
Okay.
With us. So yeah, I was just mentioning to Heinrich about the importance of these global partnerships that we're trying to connect. So trying to do whatever we can do in our local communities, but I think it's really important to remember that because we're trying to interact with global organizations like these UN Global Compact members, hopefully that we'll be able to get their support. So I'm hopeful that 2023 can be a landmark year for this network.
Yes.
So I actually, this gentleman, Zach, that came on as supposed to be our guest speaker today, his cell phone died. So he was just using that as to connect with us, and my opening presentation took an hour. So I gotta go through that, and maybe for next month shorten it again one more time.
Okay.
Because I tried to go through and I was actually thinking of adding a couple pages, but then I realized, oh, this is already very long. So I didn't do that.
But I found it it's always interesting, and for me particularly being in South Africa in Soweto, and as Prince Andrew would say, please introduce yourself, state where you are. So let me introduce myself before I get in trouble. Yes, I'm Juliet Niabo. I'm based in South Africa. I do work in townships, primarily in Soweto, as an epicenter for a lot of other townships. I was saying that your presentation today, I think it connected a lot of dots. You know, when you've, because this year has been a very challenging year in South Africa, and I've indicated that a lot. I mean, since the month of June, or the month, I can't remember, I think it was the month of June when things started going very wrong. So your presentation this year, you know, as I was listening, it was almost reminding us, or particularly myself, that that there's still hope, you know, even if there's a big storm of fire, that even if there's a big challenges we are faced with, what all those things that we've gone through, or some of them we are still going through, but the major ones, the ones that are directly life-threatening, the drive-by shootings, the raping and the killing of the girls, all that. So at times one can easily focus on the storm, and forget that there's a hope of a rainbow coming by, you know. So your presentation today for me was almost like a signal of a rainbow, to say that at the end of all, you know, when there's a storm, it will stop. It might stop temporarily, but there's hope, you know. There is hope. There is hope to rebuild.
Yeah, I think the rainbow analogy is really good, because that happens usually after the storm, when the sun comes out.
Exactly. And it doesn't mean that it won't rain again. It might rain again, but the rainbow is just an opportunity for you to regather and restore. So, you know, all those projects and what you guys are doing in Markham's, I look at that, I'm thinking I need to go into detail and see how we can just take that model, you know, what we can to say.
Well, this is the idea, is we're trying to establish a model. So that's why we have templates. That's why we're just creating these discussion groups around all of the themes that we want to touch on, and then invite everybody from around the world to join in this conversation. So I think but for me, I think the most important thing is that sort of schedule for 2023. This is what we wanted to talk about today among our members. Of course, we don't have any other members of Drawdown Markham with us. They're all probably, again, like Heinrich mentioned, not thinking about any work. They're thinking about Christmas and New Year's and family and whatever. So that's why nobody's coming on our call. But it actually gives me an opportunity during these slower times to think about and do other sort of tedious things, because I'm not really pressed for other to do sort of planning or events. Like sometimes I feel pressure to really get things done, but this is a nice sort of, okay, I can just sort of sit back and relax a little bit. But to plan for 2023, for me, I think there's 4 big events, and it's only 4, right? And there's time between, with the first big event being, and this is what Mitch Gold. So Mitch Gold is this gentleman who's from Canada, but he lives in Mexico. So Mitch came on our call last month. So the big thing is April 22nd is Earth Day. So that basically gives us 4 months to plan for a big event on Earth Day on April 22nd. And I was mentioning to Heinrich as well that we want to start doing hybrid events where we're gathering young people, especially in those schoolrooms. And I was again mentioning to Heinrich, like, this is also what Sir Bailey had been doing in Los Angeles when he had his calls, when he had his Zoom calls. He would do it with his students. So he's a teacher at the school, at the college there. And so he would have the Zoom calls with his students behind him, and he would feature the students, and the students would be able to talk. So the students in his classroom would talk with another classroom of students in another country, like in Kenya or Uganda or wherever else in the world. This is the idea of the Sister Schools program activities that we could do, right? So if we can get a Sister Schools program going, where University of Toronto, York University, and maybe a couple of universities in Sierra Leone and Kenya and Uganda and South Africa and whatever, even in Sri Lanka or something like that, and then have a Zoom call where we bring all these students on. Like they're in the classroom with their teachers, right?
Yes.
And so I actually did have a call with a young lady who just joined. I just got introduced again by our guest speaker today, Zach, who was intending to do his presentation today. But again, his cell phone died. But he introduced me to a young lady who's a student at Seneca College, which is the local college here. And so I'm hoping to, and I had this conversation with her just 2 days ago, hoping to actually start talking with the, because she's taking it's a business sustainability course at Seneca College. So if I can talk with her professor and we can arrange it, we can get all the students in her class to come on a Zoom call with your class, with a class at a university in, like I said, in Africa.
Yeah.
And then we can do an event on April 22nd, Earth Day,
Okay.
which is now also called UNDRIP Day. So we're going to celebrate UNDRIP and the implementation of UNDRIP in our local communities. And UNDRIP, of course, is the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So
Awesome.
that ties into our support of Indigenous peoples in local communities. And then we'll do a drumming ceremony, and we'll start getting those young people excited to build their first youth peace garden. And then we'll get them to build that youth, because it's April 22nd, that's the springtime here. We'll start getting them to build that youth peace garden between Earth Day, April 22nd, and June 5th, which is World Environment Day, which is the day we do our Tree of Peace and Reconciliation tree planting ceremonies. So we can start planting the Tree of Peace and Reconciliation in those youth peace gardens that are built by the young students at the schools who came together on UNDRIP Day on April 11th, right? So now we have the Sister Schools program engaging the young people in the and the students in the schools here in, let's say, at Seneca College, and another school in South Africa and Uganda and Sierra Leone and Kenya and wherever, right? And so now it's the students who are building the gardens. It's the students who are planting the trees with their professors, right? And we're just facilitating this. We're just providing a platform for them to have these interactions around the world through these social media platforms like Zoom. And then the next event after that. So we've basically got a month and a half between April 22nd and June 5th to build those gardens in the local communities. So 4 months until we have to do that first event. Then a month and a half before we plant the Tree of Peace and Reconciliation, put the Indigenous Unity flag, put the peace pole. So some students can design a peace pole. Other students can say, how do we design the garden? And we can have them do tasks like this, right? And that's part of their curriculum. They can get credits for that as part of their learning. And then between the June 5th, the World Environment Day, the next event is in August. So there's about 2 months between June 5th and the Bubble Fun Festival. So we can start planning Bubble Fun Festivals 2 months later in August. So June to August, we can plan for these Bubble Fun Festivals at every place where we plant a youth peace garden. And we can do arts and sports and dancing and whatever, all these things. Again, the young people can plan that as part of their course. And that's all part of the Sister Schools program. And then finally, we have the October 4th event, which is the Global Cooperation Day. And then we have the Youth Peace Week, which like we did this year. But now, instead of just virtual events, we can have in-person events at the schools with the youth, with the students, with the teachers. And we can really build this up. So we can plan out the whole year based on just 4 events, right? April, Earth Day, April 22nd, June 5th, World Environment Day, Bubble Fun Festivals in August, and Global Cooperation Day, the Youth Peace Week in October. And that can round out our entire thing, but we can really start building this global network and start building those local partnerships as a result of doing those events, because that's what the purpose of the events is for. is to build the INAV collaboratives, this interfaith neighborhood to academic business collaboratives across the 8 different sectors of each local community: public, private, civil society, academic, interfaith. Bring them all together and create a local co-op that's their empowerment network for those young people, right? That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
This is ultimately what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, Mr. Lloyd, I'm sure Hendrik will have to apply our minds, because it's good, because we're looking at, you're saying 4 events. And I'm already thinking that it would be good to talk to a university like University of Johannesburg, UJ, called UJ, because they have campuses at different places and different parts of Gauteng.
Exactly.
They also have a campus. What I like about them, that they have one of their campuses in Soweto. So what it then is, not only would we involve their students, we can also bring in a few schools that are in the vicinity to participate.
Yeah, and affiliated with them, right? Any other schools that already have partners, because schools always have partnerships between other schools globally, right? I know U of T probably has hundreds of schools around the world that they're partnered with. So does York, and so does any university, right?
Yeah, no, we would do that, because and also just to also get some high school children oriented into being at university. You know, I think environment counselor. Yes, because I mean, I know with me, it really helped when I was used to get my extra lessons at a university when I was at high school. It made me want to be at university even more. So yeah, so that's just my thinking in terms of the partners, because we would have to propose this very early in the year, next year, around the 4 events. And then I know August, Hendrik, we have AHIABGA-Day, isn't it? On August the 9th in South Africa.
That's normally around there, yes.
Yeah, is it August the 9th? Yes. Is it August?
Well,
it's in August.
Basically, we have a window in August, right, to do those Bubble Fun festivals.
Okay.
But I mean, we've got 4 months until Earth Day, right, to do really good planning for all the events, right? We can plan all the events ahead of time as much as possible.
Yes.
We can put up Eventbrite pages for these 4 events, and that can be as global. And we will basically say, this is a global sister schools project that that we're trying to connect all these schools, right, and all the young people especially, so they know because they need to know what are these solutions and how to implement them.
So we'll do it under the sister schools program. I think that's
I think that's the best thing, right? Is start building youth peace gardens under the sister schools program and doing these 4 events, right? And I think that could make it fairly simple for us to just plan out the entire year. I continue having our Thursday meetings and these weekly or monthly drawdown meetings, just to sort of continue to engage our own communities, and hopefully we'll attract some of these investors and some of the funders, and they'll recognize, oh, well, look at what this network is doing. Because I mean, as I mentioned today during the call, this what was it? This finance network. I'm trying to find the name.
Which one? The one from yesterday?
No, it's called. Let's see. So I wrote it. Expert group on net zero emissions commitments of non-state entities was in March. They came together in March. So that was with UN Secretary General Guterres. And then this was actually the chair was Catherine McKenna, former Canadian Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. And they included some pretty high-level people from around the world. But basically, they came together as a network of financing. And this is actually one of the important things about Ottawa, why Ottawa is really important, why our chapter in Ottawa is really important, because the church where Mark Carney is a member of is also the church that that hosted UnityNet Ottawa's first meeting. So the lady in Ottawa who we're working with, who started UnityNet Ottawa, is basically brought me on to a call with Mark Carney.
Wow.
And so he's the guy that basically there's this what they call the Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative. So this came together. I forget the date exactly, but I put it in the chat. It says Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative, because so many communities now are trying to achieve net zero too, right? So
Okay.
in addition to the climate goals and the SDGs, there's net zero, this whole idea of net zero. So the Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative has more than 290 asset managers around the world who have committed to changing their portfolios to meet net zero greenhouse gas emission targets. The group collectively represents more than $66 trillion in assets under management and has signed up for the Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative. 86 of the 290 have disclosed relevant revised targets, and $21 trillion in funds have been committed to achieve net zero by 2050 or earlier.
Wow.
So there is money out there, and this is being led by the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, which is chaired by Mark Carney, who is the
Wow.
UN Special Envoy for Climate Action and Finance. He's brought together 160 firms who are responsible for assets in excess of $70 trillion.
Yeah.
So there is money waiting to be spent, but they need us to be ready with solutions that are investment ready
Yeah.
in these communities, right? We need to be investor ready. And that is the biggest challenge we have, is to get everybody up to speed to be ready for these big money to come in to their communities, to say, we're going to build major infrastructure everywhere it needs to be built to reduce emissions, because they promised they'd do it, right? And we're going to hold their feet to the fire to say, look, we're ready. You want to invest in our community? We're there, we're ready.
Yeah.
I mean, I could move faster and just forget all the rest of our network and say, look, we want to do it here in Markham only, right? I could do it, right? Because my counselor, I mentioned again during the call, I mean, he wants to build 16 transit stations across our community, each one of them with a vertical farm integrated into this transit hub, which is going to be public transit. It's going to be like connecting the subway together with a high-speed rail, or actually it's a low-speed rail probably along the highway corridor, right? And so they're gearing up to have the entire York region invest in these projects. 16 brand new transit stations that are going to have vertical farms in them, right?
Yeah. Now that you speak of trains, I don't know what you think of this, Hendrik. You know that there's in South Africa there's a restoration of the railway system that was damaged around the COVID period, that was vandalized. I mean, we had a lot of train stations, a huge railway system network that was damaged. So it's being restored. And now that you're mentioning this, Hendrik, I don't even think that PRASA or the Minister of Transport would be thinking even along those lines, you know? Wouldn't it be good to see what they are speaking of there in Markham or is it Toronto, to see whether we can introduce a similar aspect to the the railway lines or the train stations, I'm
Mhm.
thinking in terms of what gardens can be planted, because the railway stations are going to have high security. Now they're going to be, the security is going to be doubled up and tripled up. So they're going to be very secure spaces, unlike in the past, the way they were just, yeah. So
Yeah, so
then-
build an indoor vertical unity garden learning center integrated with the transit stations, right? That's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking, right? I want to build
Yeah.
16 unity gardens across our community. If they're going to build 16 brand new rail stations or transit stations, which are going to include not just it might be like a light rail, they call it. It might be bus rapid transit, they call that as well, right?
Mhm.
Like basically
we-
they have these plans, so why not connect it with those major projects? That's also what they're doing in Los Angeles, because right now, of course, part of the reason we're trying to build, like with Lisa Anise, this youth network with the hip hop community, focusing on the preparation of this hip hop dancing culture project is in preparation for the Olympics, right? Because hip hop is going to be an Olympic in the Olympics, right? Or breakdancing, not hip hop. Breakdancing is going to be an Olympic sport at Paris in 2 years, right? In 2024. So Lisa Anise is preparing the young people to participate in that, but also to carry our message at the Olympics, right? Have the young people carry our message during the Olympics. So our message gets conveyed in Paris in 2024. And you know why we want to do that in 2020 to prepare for 2024 is because Los Angeles hosts the Olympics in 2028. And what do they want to do in Los Angeles? They're also building a brand new transit system station from the airport in Los Angeles to the Olympic Village in Los Angeles. And guess where that transit system passes through? The transit system in Los Angeles is that new rail line from the airport to the Olympic Village is going to pass through some of the most destitute communities in Los Angeles, some of the worst, most ugliest places in Los Angeles. So the city wants to rehabilitate all of those communities and make them beautiful and create a bunch of businesses along the route so the people visiting Los Angeles don't see urban blight.
Yes.
Right? So work with the city, work with their major infrastructure projects and say, look, if you're going to build a brand new station or you're going to rehabilitate this thing, you're rebuilding it anyway, that money's going to be spent. Let's just put in a youth peace garden in there. Let's put in a unity garden learning center in there with this project that's going to be built anyway. Right? We'll engage the young people. We'll make sure they're employed. We'll give them skills. We'll do all of this stuff to ensure that we don't go back into this whole situation again.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. No. For me, it's a brilliant idea. It will be good to see how we can incorporate and introduce it. I'm looking, and I've been in discussion with someone who's going to help me or help our team to manage these big projects, because we know what needs to be done. We have the networks, we have the contacts, we know the councillors, we know the ministers, we know all the relevant people. It's just that, on the ground, one has always worked with volunteers, and most of them, they're not skilled. So I've sourced someone who will make sure, they have the experience. They've run 10 NGOs before and NPOs, even on a global. They've done something for Hollywood. So they're quite experienced. So that's why, if you notice, I've been quiet about this dance thing, because I felt, let me source someone who can manage these things, because this is a good idea. The trains are being refurbished, there's pavement, they're being painted, so we might as well see those models, and then introduce them. And then the train stations can be, because those are transit spaces, can be spaces that are healthy, you know, where it's not just about people rushing. There could be other positive, lively things.
Yeah, you start growing food in those spaces, and you start creating cafes and little nooks and crannies where that local food is actually served and shown to the people, and people just sort of provide them places to relax and have a coffee or a tea or something like that, and sit under the shade of a tree, because you're planting trees too, because we want these unity forest gardens. So why not a little space in the corner of that place where people can actually sit and relax, and if they're waiting for their train or something like that.
Yes, and I'm even thinking, even with dancing, with the hip hop and that whole, remember that hip hop also includes cultural dance. In the past, in the 80s,
so have a little stage set up in the corner beside the trees, beside the places where the people at the transit station are.
Yeah, so they can come, someone can come from one community, hop off, have their training sessions, hop back onto a train, go home, you know. So yeah, no, it's a good idea. So it will be good to see what's being. We will just look at what you guys are doing and just tweak it and see what they think on the side. PRASA, it's the Port and Railway organization that runs. I mean, it was caught up with a lot of corruption last year and the other years. Obviously, it's been happening for a while. So they need something like this to clean up their image, you know. So I think we'll have to pitch it that way, so that their image can be linked to community development, to youth, to employment, to net zero. So I think it would be good for their reputation. So we'll propose it in that fashion.
And this for me, it started with the discussion with my counselor a couple of years ago, where I said, well, we're hoping to plant. This was, you know, Joan. Have you met Joan Kerr before? Virtually on any calls?
I think I have in one of the sessions here.
Probably some of the early calls, because Joan hasn't been on for a while. But Joan, with the Foundation for Building Sustainable Communities, wanted to basically build one of her CSV gardens, the Climate Smart Victory Gardens, in the Rouge National Park here. And so that's actually another thing we have, right? As we can connect all those transit stations, the 16 transit stations. There's a brand new subway station, brand new subway stop that's being built right now. And then it's coming up to close to where I live. And across Highway 7, which is where I am, there's going to be these 16 stations. And then at the other end of the stations, at the last station from the main new subway station, there's a national park, and it's the first urban national park. So we want to get tourists to come in and visit all those transit stations as tourist destinations. So that's the tie into tourism for SDGs. So you can say, well, hey, if you put these in, you make each one unique, people are actually going to start traveling to these places on purpose to visit them, because it's cool. It's a place to be. It's a place to visit. And if each one has, let's say, is linked to a unique South African, like in your case, South African indigenous community, and those indigenous communities adopt each one of those transit stations, and they each have a unique culture and a unique dance and a unique music, we can make them really cool to places to visit, right?
Oh, definitely. That's even a very excellent idea, because the train stations, I mean, for instance, if you think about Merafi, okay, this one help, but there's an area called Merafi. Merafi has a lot of Basotho, Basotho people, Sotho and Tswana people, and then you have another one that is closer to a hostel that would have more Zulu people. You have Mansfield, you have Dube, that is also traditionally Zulu. You have others that are in purely almost urban.
Hello, Andrew. We're still on. Yes, we're still live. We're still live. It's been a long time. I guess we should probably get on.
I apologize.
No, as I said.
You're no longer live. We
Ooh, look
have
at
a
Prince
12
Andrew.
o'clock,
As I said, you're looking good
Juliet.
there, hey?
Juliet, we have a 12 o'clock meeting, and I'm afraid I have to end this call.
Okay,
So you let-
no problem. Thank you.
Yes, no problem. Thank you so much.